let's get this on another episode of the Soothing Semantics podcast. I am your host, Rafi Pinsky. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, leave your comments. And today we have a good old round two with a very good friend of mine, a loan officer, and my preferred loan officer who's always doing an incredible job to make sure that all of my clients and anyone else's clients for that matter are getting the best possible service. So, Lucas Faillace from U Mortgage. His Instagram is Lucas Lending. If any of you are looking for an amazing LO, make sure to go to his Instagram. This way you can reach out to him. And without further ado, sir, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining me.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely, dude. Happy New Year. I hope you have a lot of incredibly big goals for this year, hoping to make this year a much better year than the last. Now, what are a couple of things that you're noticing in the real estate market in terms of mortgages? Obviously, we're seeing that the rates are coming down a little bit. So give us a little bit of an idea
hmm
from your end how things are kind of shifting and changing.
Yeah, so it's as you said, and it's kind of hard to avoid in like the big media. People are hearing about rates coming down. So we've seen the 30-year go from, around 8% when it hit its high in November, to lately it's been in the high sixes, around seven. I want to say the average now is maybe about 6.8-ish, somewhere around there. And that's a big deal. I mean, affordability has been on the tip of everyone's tongue for a while. And the fact is that the average person, it depends on the market that you're in, but especially let's say in our market, the average person, they're in a position where it's difficult to afford like an average house. Like median income was having difficulty and still having difficulty affording a median sales price. So with rates coming down, that starts to generate the conversation of like maybe I can afford this now. And like as an example, like on an average on a median sales price of 400 something thousand dollars, let's say someone's putting a low down payment, a 1% reduction in rate reduces the payment about 330, $350 per month. So it's very substantial.
Mhm.
And so what happens is as rates come down, it starts to generate these conversations. Okay, maybe I can do this now. And so what will happen is mortgage applications increase. And you'll tend to find that as rates come down, number of transactions increases, rates increase, rate of people being able to afford, excuse me, increase as rates are coming down. So that's what I'm seeing now is I'm receiving more phone calls, number of applications are up. And not to say it solves the problem for everybody, but the statistic is that for every 1% decrease in rate, 5 million home buyers nationwide become eligible, like in terms of they're able to afford the mortgage payment. So
Mhm.
it's at 5 million per every 1%. That's nationwide. But for a market that is already experiencing and has been experiencing a inventory shortage nationwide, and some markets more than others, but in general nationwide, when you have an increase in buyers that are eligible to purchase in the market, you'll tend to notice increase in number of offers per home, which, as you know, will reflect in sales prices increasing, bidding wars, that sort of thing. So anyway, so we're starting to notice that pick up a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that that is definitely not something you're complaining about.
No, no, definitely not. And it's
Right?
it's funny because in the fourth quarter, normally things are a little bit slower. I mean, December, just naturally, like holiday season, people are spending time with their families. But that was happening. The rate decreases were happening as like holiday season was happening. So a lot of us didn't actually see as much of like a lull as you would expect in that time. So no, yeah, definitely not complaining. It's definitely very welcomed. And I wouldn't say refis make sense for most people just yet, but those conversations are starting to happen. I've had clients reach out to me like, hey, I noticed, people hear it in the media. They're like, hey, I noticed rates are coming down. Do you think it makes sense for me to refinance? And so, yeah, you can definitely expect more movement. Refinances means cash out, means maybe they're buying another property, so it can reflect in more home sales. It can mean a lot of things. So, good for, all of us in the industry and for home buyers too. I mean, it's always frustrating, and I'm sure you've experienced it yourself, where you're working with, someone that, you really want to get them into a home, but they're like, Rafi, Lucas, this $400,000 home, I can't pay $3,500 a month, you
Mhm.
know? And
Mhm.
so that's frustrating. And so as you see rates coming down for the folks that are really attentive and proactive, that really is an opportunity for them to get into the market before prices start to creep up, as we all know that they will.
Mhm.
That $300, $400 decrease in the payment, I mean, that's a lot. So,
It helps a lot. I also think that rates will continue to go down. It just seems that that's the trajectory. And I would implore buyers, people who are listening to this who do intend to buy in the near future, don't wait too long. Meaning, once the rates are at 6%, they start to hit five, maybe even below five. Excellent time to buy. It's been a good time to buy. All the more so if you are looking to buy now with lower rates and you're hoping to wait until a potential 3%, which may or may not come, and then you're going to end up having to fight tooth and nail to get a property like you were during COVID, which I don't think is going to be in your best interest. You'll end up paying a premium on the price. You'll have to put in multiple offers on different homes. You're going to be really fighting tooth and nail to get the property you want. And it's tough. If you have a life, you have a family, kids, a job, and you're trying to go and run after a house, and you find your dream house, and there are 20 other offers on it, and you're maybe putting 25% down, and there are a bunch of cash offers, it can be very demotivating, very challenging. So, you know, if you are ready to buy and you are listening to this podcast, definitely get in touch with me. We will get you in touch with Lucas, see what you can afford, and take it from there. So that is my take. But I'm excited for it, man. I think it's going to really open a lot of doors for buyers now. I have a few buyers now that I'm working with, and they're in the lower price points, and they're not exactly wealthy people. Some of them are young families, young couples looking to start their family journey in a starter home or a starter apartment, and they either cannot afford, they barely have affordability, and they can't really seem to find what they're looking for. And I think now with the rates coming down a bit, that may be what they need in order to get into the house.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it's
Mhm.
kind of like a double-edged sword a little bit, because as the rates come down, as more buyers enter the market, as we described, for those same folks that, want to get into a home and maybe are not they can't be the most competitive because they're limited on funds, which is super normal for first time home buyers, that they need to try
Mhm.
to come in with the least amount of money possible. As rates come down, they're going to start to find themselves in, bidding wars. So like you said, it's like it's a timing. There is something to it, because waiting too long, it's attractive for rates to come down, of course, but it's not just attractive for your buyer, it's attractive for everybody. So then they find themselves in that bidding war. Then it's like, well, I can afford the payment, but now I can't get into the house. And like you said, it can be very frustrating. We experienced that a lot in 2020 and 2021 and early 2022. And I mean, it's frustrating. You have this like list of pre-approved buyers, but they're submitting offers left and right and not having them accepted. So it can sound like a sales pitch to say, oh yeah, buy now, it's a great time to buy. And people are like, what are you talking about? Rates are 7%. And it's like, I understand the sentiment, but really, like, if you look around, if you talk to your neighbors, people that maybe sold or bought or something around that time, parents, family members, like, besides us, obviously they can talk to us, but if they talk just to their sphere, like, they'll tell them there were like 20 offers per house, 30 offers per house.
Crazy.
So
Nuts,
it's
yeah.
it's crazy. Yeah, so it's like that's coming, and I don't think rates are going to need to get to 3 or 4% for that to happen. I think people are
Oh, no,
already
not at
talking
all.
like now, like, oh, rates are below
Mhm.
7. Whoa, like I need to start looking. Let rates hit 5%. Like it's going to be madness.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Because I think a lot of people understand that 3% might not be a thing. It may happen again down the road. I don't think it's going to happen now. I don't think it's going to go get to that point. But that leads me to another question, Lucas. In terms of all the NAR lawsuits, where there is this projected plan to have the buyers paying the agents, if, say, a young couple is buying their first property and they don't have a lot of funds, maybe their parents are helping them out with the down payment, they're looking to buy something very simple. If they have to come up with that 3% or the 2.5%, that could be the difference between them getting in the home and not getting in the home.
Hmm.
So say that is implemented, say that ends up being the
Hmm.
case and buyers are now expected to pay the commissions. What do you suggest? Has that kind of crossed your mind? What would you think?
Yeah, no, it's crossed my mind, and I attended an event that our company held in Michigan in November, and we actually had an editor and the CEO of Housing Wire. They came and they spoke about this specific the lawsuit, and I mean it's an interesting topic. Obviously, naturally, there's speculation in terms of like what the ramifications are going to be in the market, like how people are going to respond. But there is thoughts that maybe loan programs might come out that facilitate that a little bit.
Mm,
Again, that's speculation, but sometimes loan programs in the market has to respond to things like that because that is a very realistic and reasonable kind of like obstacle people are going to have. It's like you're already coming with the down payment, closing costs, and now potentially commission because it's like, okay, well, what if I don't use a real estate agent, or what if okay, if the seller, I mean, you know better than most, but I already notice it now, speaking with real estate agents, if a seller lists a property offering 2% commission to the buyer's agent, the likelihood of that home being shown drops significantly compared to the standard 2.5 or 3%.
it's funny, by the way. I was talking to a very close friend about this, and he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that this is a thing, meaning that agents won't show the property because he's just a very good dude,
Yeah.
and it's a very normal question. It's like, okay, you're making less money, so you're not going to show the property. Like you're going to be a crappy person and not show the property if this is what
Hmm.
your client might very much like. And he was so blown away by it. And I was like, yep, unfortunately. And I can proudly say I'm not one of those people, which I shouldn't even be proud of. It's really not something that I think is a no-brainer. Like you have to have some forward thinking and say to yourself, maybe I'm losing some commission now, but I think my client will be extremely happy with me, especially if they know that I took a cut to get them into that
Hmm.
house. So yeah, I
Hmm.
was kind of like, hey man, I'm not it's not great, but unfortunately in every business you have those people. So he was mind blown by it. He's like, I can't believe that.
You
Yeah.
burst his bubble.
Yeah, I gave him the reality. But yeah, I explained that to sellers, they're not always aware of that fact.
Yeah, and exactly right. Because some people think, well, it's 2%. It's not that big of a difference to two and a
Mhm.
half, let's say, which is much more common. 3%, still common as well. But yeah, so you think of it from that point of view, that's just going from 3 to 2. If you go
Mhm.
from 2.5 to 0, um, you know, the like th that home, the marketability of that home is going to be affected.
And by the way,
That's
this is going to be tough. See, this is why have you heard of Ricky Carruth?
yeah, I like his stuff.
And this is why he's saying now more than ever, we don't know when this is going to be implemented. You need to focus on listings. As a real estate
Hmm.
agent, if you are not listing focused, you're going to find yourself having a hard time because buyers, I already know this is going to happen. It's clear as day. What's going to happen? Buyers are going to say, I just don't have the cash. I would pay you 3%. I just don't have it.
Hmm.
I need to get into a house. If I pay you 3%, how am I going to have the money to do it? And what are you going to do? You're going to feel guilty. You're going to want to help them. You're going to sign some sort of agreement. That's going to also be a requirement. You're going to have to sign buyer broker agreements because now they're expected to pay commission.
Hmm.
And you're going to run into trouble because what are you going to say? Hey, if you don't pay me 3%, I won't work with you. Yeah, I guess if you have, a large enough book of business and you can really call the shots and you're not worried about losing a bunch of potential clients, then sure. If that's how you want to work your business. But I think buyers agents are going to have to start taking pretty big hits on commission. It's I see it happening. I think in the luxury market, probably a lot less often, just simply because they have the money to put down, they have the funds, and even so, even then, they're probably going to try to negotiate. So I think being a listing agent is all the more so, more than ever where you're going to want to be.
Yeah. And not to be too like
Yeah, and by the
rose.
way, it's funny I'm saying this because you're a mortgage broker, so obviously there's always going to be a need, but
Hmm.
it makes things, makes things a little tough.
Yeah, yeah. And not to be like too like rose colored glasses about this or like toxic positivity or whatever, like ignoring all the
Hmm.
downsides,
Hmm.
about this for real estate agents in the industry. But I am kind of glad, not for the lawsuit, but for anything that like raises the bar for real estate agents.
Oh, I love where you're
Um,
going. I love where you're going. Okay, go
because
ahead.
like, I mean, you're a totally different class than a majority, but you know what I mean? Like you try calling some agents or you speak with them and it's like, how are you licensed to sell a house? It's a house, it's not like a 18 like my iPhone,
They
like
make the
the per
bar too low, man. They make
yeah.
the bar of getting into this business way too low. That's the problem.
Hmm.
And they set this really low standard. And then when you get into it, you realize it's once you know how to work a transaction, it's not that difficult. Things, I mean, don't get me wrong, things definitely happen which make it difficult, but the process is fairly straightforward, right? There are
Hmm.
deadlines, there are things that need to be completed. It does get somewhat complicated. It's more
Hmm.
about problem solving than it is you know doing surgery on someone's brain. It's not neurosurgery. But then again, you're dealing with most people's biggest assets. And just some agents either don't care, they're not attentive, they're not responsive, they don't want to learn. So I love what yeah, go on, finish what you're saying because I love where you're going with that.
Yeah, but pretty much it's that. So, the people that are kind of just riding the coattails of tradition and like, well, I'm a real estate agent, so this is what I get paid, period. Like there's no negotiation pretty much. Like it's whatever the seller said, like you're a buyer's agent. I mean, it's like, hey, the MLS says 2.5%, that's what I get. There aren't too many other industries that are like that. Like you make what you're worth. Like,
Right.
what value you bring. And so I am happy for this in that sense, where agents such as yourself that, are responsive, are professional, do the right thing, communicate effectively, are bringing value, are protecting their clients, looking out for their best interest, trying to make sure they get a good deal, avoid a bad deal, like all the things that go into a transaction, which to us is simple, but really like it is quite a bit. And so to be able to now have a differentiator where it's like someone like yourself who can communicate effectively, their value proposition, brings something that is worthwhile, whether it's selling or buying or whatever the scenario is, they're buying an investment property, buying their primary, whatever. This is now going to allow for those folks to, be able to charge to the buyer. Or again, is it always going to happen? I mean, I don't want to paint with like too broad of a brushstroke, but in general, those folks who have a presentation, have something to bring to the table, are going to reap the benefits of that because the other ones, think about it, the average like, whatever real estate agent, once it gets to the point that that person has to pay them like themselves and that person's not responding, it's the family member, it's the whatever, like, are you really gonna pay them? Like, I don't know if you will, but someone
Mhm.
who's, you can tell they know their stuff, they're helping you, they're protecting you, they're looking out for your best interest. It's like, is it always going to happen? No, but it's much more likely that that agent is able to get compensated by the buyer as if it was a consultant or an attorney or like someone
Right.
who's bringing you something that protect, like, do people like, sure, you're going to shop, because I'm thinking of like an attorney situation, right? Like you might shop for rates or like hourly rates or whatever, but when you come across that person that, like I'm thinking of stuff that I had where I had to like interview attorneys. Like if you come across a person that you feel really has your best interest at heart and they're looking out for you, like that's going to give you a sense of ease where it's like, okay, hey, do I want to pay this two, three, $5,000? No, but I know this person's looking out for me. And I just think it's a different conversation at that point because it is up to merit and not up to just like, this is what it's always been. I thought that part of the lawsuit was like valid in terms of like, prices have gone up exponentially, right? Since whenever this, if it was the 70s or 80s or whenever it was that it started out, I don't recall.
Mhm.
So prices have gone up exponentially, but percentage of compensation hasn't changed. So it's like, so obviously compensation is increasing as the purchase price is increasing. But the like this kind of bar like hasn't been set. And so I just think it's like if someone was making 3% at a $100,000 or $80,000 average purchase price, 30 years ago, right? But now you're still making 3% at a $500,000 average purchase price. It's like, I don't want to be, like, I don't know, can I curse?
Yeah, of course, dude.
Yeah. So I don't want to
Whatever
be
you need.
shitting on people's dreams, but like, it's like like the market can like regulate, some things. Like it's not unreasonable to say, well, you were making $3,000 per transaction, then maybe you don't need to make $15,000 per transaction now. Like maybe there is something there, but to have it to where now at least it's something that the efficient agent can use to differentiate themselves, because then those mediocre real estate agents, they're not going to be able to hang, they're not going to be able to compete. Like it's going to be a
Hmm.
thing where they can't present effectively, they're not going to get paid, and then they're out of the industry, and they should be doing something that is more worth their skills and their efforts. And so everyone's where they end up where they should be, but I feel like a lot of people get into the industry as like a money grab, and it's like, well, I can make how much selling this, and all I have to do is take
It's
this
so
free
crazy.
hour. And it's like, yeah, and all I have to do is this. And then do they become superstars? No, but that's the family member that does one deal a year. That's the whatever that and it becomes this thing where it just muddies the waters. And the term real estate agent almost becomes kind of like mortgage broker sometimes too, but kind of becomes like like, oh, you're a real estate agent or you're a mortgage broker. And it's like, as opposed to someone who has to earn, like, it just, I just think it'll be seen differently. Hopefully I'm describing it well, but they have to earn their way, and it's not just like
Sure.
a given. And I hope that changes the sentiment around the industry as well, because I know some great real estate agents, again, such as yourself, that like would be the person that I would want representing myself, like the person that is looking out for the client. But then there's other ones, and it's like, dude, I feel bad for your client, for
Yeah.
real, you know? So,
Yeah, it's so accurate. I know I think the barrier to entry will be more difficult. I think it'll also even scare some real estate agents into even getting into the business because some people will feel uncomfortable asking the buyer to pay altogether, and that pressure on them will be too much for them to handle. There are all these little nuances that I think will make the pool of agents smaller, which sure I'll be competing with better realtors than I am now, meaning when you have a larger pool of agents, you have, in a sense, less competition because a lot of them aren't great, right? So
mhm,
now you're going to have a smaller pool of agents, but those agents will, for the most part, be higher quality, which I just, at the end of the day, there's going to be more market share, period.
mhm, mhm,
Because all of these kind of mediocre agents who don't really take the business seriously, they kind of just sit around, they have their regular job and they wait for deals to come to them. They're maybe doing a deal or two a year for 20 years. They've never really been in the business. They just work with friends and family. When friends and family want to do them a favor, they kind of give them the deal because that's like, well, I kind of have to, I'm kind of obligated to. But this
mhm.
person never really gave a damn about the business altogether. So I think a lot of more of those realtors are just not really going to be involved. I'm sure they're still going to exist. They'll probably still do their couple of deals a year. But yes, I think there's definitely an upside. The business isn't going anywhere, that's for damn sure. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to work both ends, whether it's buy or sell. And yeah, I think you really articulated it well.
Hmm.
Are there any things that you wanted to maybe bring up aside from what we discussed?
No, not really. I mean, I'm trying to think. I'm gonna kind of say it out loud, but the market is shifting. Sentiment in the stock market and bond market has changed, and that's inflation, and that is what is affecting what we're seeing with rates trending down. The kind of dovish tone that the Fed did have in terms of like, hey, as long as inflation is curbed, we will stop the rate increases and we'll start implementing some rate cuts. The market kind of like ran with that, and now they're like projecting like 140 basis points in rate cuts. The Fed never said that. But I think it's a lot more about sentiment than it is about like fact
Hmm.
at the moment. And the sentiment is that rate cuts are going to happen, and hence that's why the market's responded how it's responded. Um, but no, I mean, I think it's a great time, to either to be in the industry for all the reasons that we just described, in terms of separating yourself. And as there's all this like has been turmoil, has been a challenging year, but there's a lot of positives in that. And I think for buyers and sellers as well, it's I just keep telling people it's not going to get easier. And I guess that's like if I were to end with like a thought is I was just at a baby shower this weekend and like talking to people, and I know this guy, I talked to him, he was like, he's been a manager at, I think it's AT&T for like 6 years of a store. And,
Hmm.
they make a good living. And he used to work in the mortgage industry, like in 2015,
Hmm.
2016. That's where I met him. So he knows a little bit about the loan process, but he hasn't bought a house yet. And I was like, what are you waiting for? And he was like, oh, I'm just waiting for the right opportunity. And I'm like, what opportunity? Like there isn't like this scenario that's just going to drop out of this, hey, my microphone, that's just going to drop out of the sky. Like it's not going to get easier. It's not going to get cheaper. Like
Hmm.
now, that's my opinion. Yeah, of course, anything can happen. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. We don't see it with the inventory. We don't see it with the demands. There is nothing indicating that there is like a bubble or something. Like, at the end of the day, like we can see it with the transactions. And I think some people have been saying that, people have been saying that forever, since 2010, 2011, like, something's going to crash again, it's going to crash again. And I think it's kind of delusional to keep saying that and thinking that. And I feel it makes me feel kind of bad because the folks that are doing that, I see what's happening with rent and with home prices and everything. And you see that their situation is, unless they increase their income, which is always an option, whether it's adding a new skill, new career, or whatever the case is. But outside of increasing your income, this affordability issue, I don't think it's going to get any easier. And then it's frustrating to see it because sometimes you kind of like want to shake someone and say, hey, like maybe it's not your dream home, but like look into something, like get something, start building some equity, start
Hmm.
benefiting from this appreciation that's happening. And anyways, I can go on and on about that all day, but I see
Yeah.
people that have everything. You have everything, like you have the credit, you have the income, you have some savings. It's like there isn't some magic opportunity. You buy something you can afford. Maybe it's not the 3-2 house, maybe it's the 2-1 condo. Maybe, something that you can live in and start to benefit from, and maybe you sell it in the future and you buy something else. But I don't think there's going to be this like magic time that, is just going to be perfect. I don't think that's real.
No, I think people just get that gut feeling and they go with it or some people just never pull the trigger. That's something I say this, I've said this on so many real estate related podcasts. You have to have a motivation. Once the motivation makes sense, you can work it out because there's always going to be a reason to do or not do it. So that's always been my take. Ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this incredible episode. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Soothing Semantics. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share the episode with your friends, family, uh, your puppies, and all everyone that's close to you. Lucas Faillace, thank you as always for joining me, man. I appreciate the insight, the information. I hope everybody learned something today. Definitely make sure, guys, to follow me at Rafi the Realtor. You can sign up for my weekly newsletter. Go to Lucas's page as well. The handle is Lucas Lending. Okay, for all of your mortgage needs. And that is that. Did you have any closing words? People
No,
to
brother.
follow,
Thank you.
like.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, bro. Thank you so much. Alrighty. I will see you guys soon. Take care.